The diploma, tucked neatly into my worn leather portfolio, felt less like an achievement and more like a heavy anchor. 20 years old, a freshly minted professional chef from a top culinary institute in New York, and my future, which should have been a gleaming, sharp knife, felt frustratingly dull. The reason? A dull, persistent ache in my chest that had nothing to do with the kitchen injury. Raiden, are you listening? I said, should we get the artisanal sourdough or just stick with the cheap rye? That was Maya, my girlfriend of 3 years, her attention glued to her phone as we stood by the refrigerated section of the upscale grocery store. She was effortlessly beautiful, studying graphic design, and entirely the focal point of my life in this sprawling city. Lately, however, her actual focus seemed to be elsewhere, specifically on an old ghost named Liam. The sourdough, please, I replied, trying to inject some warmth into a voice that felt hollow. It'll go better with the smoked salmon I got for tonight. It's a special recipe I wanted to try out, an Indonesian-French fusion. Great, she murmured, her eyes still fixed on her screen, a small, private smile playing on her lips. Oh, look, Liam posted a new drawing. He's really gotten good. Remember him, my first boyfriend? He's thinking of doing a street art mural in Brooklyn. Liam, the recurring nightmare of my supposedly perfect relationship. The artist, the sensitive one, the love of her life, a status that apparently didn't fade with the 3-year separation. He was back in the city, working freelance, and his presence had infiltrated every corner of our shared life. His Instagram posts, his texts, his name. It was an uninvited, constant guest at our table. Yeah, I remember Liam, I said, grabbing the crusty loaf. The bread's roughness a painful grounding sensation. I made one last, desperate attempt to reclaim the evening. The salmon needs a perfect sear. I was thinking we could open that bottle of Muscadet. We could skip the game and just talk. About my graduation, about my catering trial next week. She finally lifted her gaze, a flicker of something. Was it guilt or just simple impatience crossing her face? She tucked her phone into her jeans pocket. Oh, Raiden, look, I'm sorry, I actually can't do dinner tonight. I told Liam I'd stop by his new gallery installation prep tonight. He's completely stressed out about the lighting design, and I have a great eye for that kind of thing. It's a huge opportunity for him, being a proper artist. Proper artist. The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded. It was more than a scheduling conflict. It was a hierarchy. His proper art trumped my work, my milestone, and our relationship. Right, lighting design, I repeated, the smile I attempted feeling like a betrayal of my own heart. So, another meticulously cooked solo dinner for me, then. She rushed over and gave me a perfunctory kiss, a quick peck devoid of passion. Don't be dramatic, you're a chef. You live to cook, and this is important for my portfolio too. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Maybe we can watch that silly cooking show you like tomorrow. I watched her walk out of the automatic door, her back to me, already pulling her phone out again. I paid for the groceries and walked the few blocks home in a dense, miserable fog. I still cooked the meal. I couldn't not cook. I needed the control, the precision, the proof that I was good at something. The salmon was flawless. A crispy skin, a perfectly cooked medium rare interior, alongside lemon-infused asparagus and a silky homemade hollandaise. I plated it exquisitely. I ate it alone, the 2 empty chairs across from me screaming with silence. The Muscadet remained unopened. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with an external validation that felt both necessary and heartbreakingly insufficient. It was a text from Ava Petrova. Raiden, your final presentation today? That truffle-infused goat cheese and mango chutney amuse-bouche was genius. Seriously, the judges were raving. That kind of bold pairing takes guts. I might need to borrow that recipe sometime. Congrats on graduation. Ava Petrova. 21, brilliant, intense, and possessing a focus that was terrifyingly magnetic. She'd been my professional rival throughout the program. always pushing me, always slightly better, always recognizing the creative spark in my work. She was already rumored to be packing her bags for a 3-star Michelin apprenticeship in Paris. She saw the art in my work. Thanks, Ava. Congrats to you too. Glad you liked it. Keep me posted on your next big move. I texted back, a genuine private smile touching my lips. At least someone understood that cooking was more than just following instructions. An hour later, Maya burst back into the apartment, tossing her bag onto the floor with a loud, exasperated sigh. Ugh, I just don't get it, she exclaimed, pacing rapidly. Liam is totally missing the mark on the typography for his installation's invitations. It's supposed to be edgy, but it just looks amateur. I send him 5 different font pairings, and he just keeps saying, trust the process. It's so infuriating. If he wants the installation to be a success, he needs to listen to me. My reputation is on the line, too. She was frantic, genuinely distressed over the potential failure of his project. Her concern for Liam outweighed her awareness of me, sitting quietly in the kitchen, observing the whole scene. Maybe he has a different vision, Maya, I offered, my voice gentle but measured. It's his art. Perhaps a more minimalist approach? She whirled around, her face flushed with frustration. You just don't understand artistic vision, Raiden. You just follow recipes and measure things exactly. This is about feeling and spontaneity. It's about taking a risk. The words, sharp and unwarranted, cut deep. You just follow recipes. The complete dismissal of my creativity, my years of study, my ambition, all reduced to the work of a glorified manual labor. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. My peace was shattered. The cold, quiet decision I made was swift and certain. You're absolutely right, Maya, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I do follow recipes, and one of them, apparently, is to stop wasting ingredients. The salmon was excellent, by the way. You should have been here. I walked past her and retreated to the small office, which had essentially become her art studio. I sat at my laptop, ignoring the sounds of her still pacing and venting to a friend on the phone, likely about Liam's disastrous font choices. I wasn't researching catering trials anymore. I opened a new browser tab and searched Executive Chef Apprenticeship Paris 3-star. The first result was a dream, an apprenticeship at Le Serpent de Mer. The requirements were insane. Fluent French, a strong portfolio, and a willingness to commit to a multi-year relocation. I barely hesitated. My French was rusty but manageable, my portfolio was fresh from graduation, and my willingness to commit, it was all I had left. I started filling out the detailed application, translating my entire culinary philosophy into French, outlining my ambition to fuse my Indonesian heritage's bold flavors with classical French technique. I needed a new recipe, a recipe for my own life, cooked without the heavy weight of her distractions. I stayed up until 3 a.m., the blue light of the screen illuminating the final page. I didn't glance toward the bedroom where Maya had finally gone to sleep, phone resting on the pillow beside her. I submitted the application, closed the laptop, and packed a small bag. I didn't take any of my knives. I didn't want the clang to wake her. I left the apartment at dawn. Not permanently, not yet, but I needed space. I drove to a tiny, greasy diner 20 miles away and ordered the worst coffee and breakfast I could find. A protest against my own perfect cooking. I would wait for the Paris acceptance. Then I would tell her I was leaving. And by the time the sun set on this new decision, Liam could have the whole city, and Maya could finally have all the time she needed to focus on his artistic integrity. My focus from this day forward was on my own. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in emotional compartmentalization. I went through the motions with Maya, a routine of strained coexistence that felt thinner than a sheet of phyllo pastry. She barely noticed the shift. Her attention was still a precious commodity, almost entirely spent on Liam's upcoming gallery debut. I continued to cook, but only for myself, making quick, simple meals that didn't require the mental investment of an artistic creation. Every time I brought up a significant conversation, my catering trial, a potential small job at a downtown bistro, she'd nod vaguely, her eyes already scanning her phone for Liam's updates. Raiden, do you think this navy blue is too aggressive for the backdrop? Liam says it speaks to his inner turmoil, but I think it just clashes with the lighting. That was a Tuesday night. I was trying to debone a chicken for stock, but my hands stilled. Maya, I don't care about Liam's inner turmoil or his backdrop. I care about the fact that I just got offered a full-time position as a sous chef at the Hearth, a huge stepping stone, and you haven't looked up from your screen in 20 minutes. She finally lowered the phone, a look of genuine annoyance hardening her features. Oh, come on, Raiden. Sous chef at a local bistro? That's nice, but it's not a career. This is Liam's life-changing moment. You can get a job anytime. Can you just tell me if the blue is too aggressive? Not a career. The casual cruelty of her dismissal was a physical punch. I dropped the chicken carcass back into the pot with a splash. I didn't need a job at the Hearth anyway, because 2 weeks after I secretly submitted my application, the most beautiful, life-altering email had landed in my inbox. Subject: Congratulations. Executive Chef Apprenticeship Offer. Le Serpent de Mer. Paris, I was in. The dream was real. I had been accepted into a highly competitive 2-year apprenticeship under one of the world's most demanding French chefs. I had immediately started the visa process, booked the flight for 6 weeks from now, and begun liquidating my savings into euros. The departure date was a secret I guarded like a prized saffron spice. It was my only leverage, my only escape. The only person who knew was Ava. We had met up for coffee near the Institute, ostensibly to discuss a shared supplier, but really I needed to talk to someone who understood ambition. Paris? Le Serpent de Mer? Raiden, that's insane. Insane good. Ava had said, stirring her espresso. Her blue eyes, sharp and intelligent, were alight with respect. I got the Paris offer too, but for a smaller place. They're lucky to have you. That fusion concept you talked about, Indonesian flavor bombs with French technique, they're going to eat it up. I haven't told Maya yet, I admitted, my gaze fixed on the steam rising from my cup. Ava didn't need an explanation. She knew the Liam dynamic. Everyone at school did. Are you worried she'll be upset about the move or upset about not being the focus of the announcement? Her bluntness was refreshing, if painful. I think I'm worried she won't care, Ava. That she'll just be annoyed it interferes with her schedule. Ava leaned forward, her voice dropping. Look, I'm going to be completely honest. I've always admired your work, your focus, your restraint. You have the potential to be truly world-class. If she can't see that, or if she dismisses it for some narcissistic artist, then she's holding you back. Go. Be selfish. This is your life. She reached across the small table and squeezed my arm, a firm, professional, yet oddly comforting gesture. And hey, maybe when we're both 3-star chefs in Europe, we can grab a coffee again. Keep in touch, Miller. I felt a genuine rush of warmth. Ava saw my potential and valued my success. It wasn't the romantic interest that Maya constantly sought from Liam, but it was a deep, meaningful, professional connection. And it was enough. Over the next few days, I slowly started moving my few possessions out of the apartment, mostly just my specialized tools, books, and clothes. I told Maya I was storing things at my parents' place upstate, preparing for the eventual move out of the city, which she waved away dismissively. The climax arrived on the night of Liam's gallery opening. Maya was beside herself with excitement, dressed in a stunning black dress. She looked gorgeous, radiant, and utterly focused on the success of her dear friend. This is it, Raiden. I spent hours correcting his invite list, and I had to physically restrain him from using Comic Sans on the captions. This is the night his life changes, she declared, applying a final layer of lipstick. I'm sure it will be a huge success, I said, leaning against the doorframe, portfolio tucked securely under my arm. I won't be joining you tonight, though. She froze, her lipstick brush hovering near her mouth. What? Why? You have to come. What if Liam needs me to run interference with a difficult art critic? I need you there for moral support. I need to be somewhere else tonight, Maya, I said, walking into the living room. I reached for a thick envelope I'd left on the mantelpiece. Inside were all the finalized rent checks, utility payment confirmations, and a handwritten note. I've covered all the bills for the next 2 months. Enough time for you to figure things out. She walked toward me, a look of confusion giving way to genuine anger. What is this? Are you having a tantrum because I prioritized Liam tonight? Are you being petty? I met her eyes, which were finally, truly focused on me for the first time in months. No, Maya, I'm choosing my career. I'm choosing my life. I'm moving to Paris. I start my apprenticeship at Le Serpent de Mer in 3 weeks. I laid the letter on the coffee table, the official acceptance letter, bold and undeniable. She stared at it, then at me, then back at the letter. Her perfect composure dissolved. Paris! You can't be serious. When did you apply? Why didn't you tell me? We're supposed to be a team, Raiden. We stopped being a team the day you started prioritizing Liam's typography over my graduation, over my career, over us, I countered, my voice low and steady. The pain was still there, but it was dulled by the exhilaration of freedom. I applied because I needed a place where my work wouldn't be dismissed as just following recipes. I didn't tell you because I knew you would turn it into a logistical problem for Liam. I couldn't risk you convincing me to stay. She snatched the letter, crumpling the corner. This is reckless. We have a lease. My life is here. What about our future? Your future, Maya, is standing in a gallery right now, nervously waiting for critics to validate his inner turmoil. And he needs you more than I do. I walked to the door, took a deep breath, and opened it. Goodbye, Maya. I hope Liam's opening is everything you hoped for. I closed the door behind me and walked out into the chilly night air, not looking back. The ache in my chest was finally gone, replaced by a fierce, driving hunger. The hunger of a chef, ready to conquer the world. I was on my way to the airport. I was skipping the gallery opening, but I was opening the most important chapter of my life. Paris was a shock to the system. A vibrant, overwhelming cacophony of smells, sounds, and relentless professional demands. It was exactly what I needed. Le Serpent de Mer was a temple of gastronomy, cold, efficient, and utterly unforgiving. Chef Etienne, a legend of French cuisine, was a tyrant, whose expectations were almost impossible to meet. But for me, the pressure was a form of therapy. It was a focus that completely obliterated the lingering ache of New York. The first 6 months were a blur of 18-hour shifts. I moved from garde-manger to poissonnier, absorbing the classical techniques like a sponge, translating my French-Indonesian culinary concepts into concrete executable dishes. I was exhausted, scarred by burns, and constantly on the verge of collapsing. But I was alive. My food was finally being judged on its own merit, not against the success of some amateur artist. I didn't hear from Maya. I changed my number before leaving and blocked her on all social media. I didn't want the distraction, the guilt, or the pull of a past that had nearly stifled my future. I was Raiden Miller, the aspiring culinary artist, not Raiden Miller, Maya's supporting character. My only consistent connection to my previous life was Eva Petrova. She had landed her own apprenticeship nearby, at a smaller but highly respected bistro. We started meeting once a month on our rare days off, usually at a tiny, smoke-filled cafe where we could talk shop. Etienne sounds like a nightmare, Eva chuckled one afternoon, sipping her coffee. My chef, Madame Dubois, is demanding, but at least she doesn't throw plates when the juice isn't reduced perfectly. Mine does, I admitted, a grim smile touching my lips. But I learned more in a single week than I did in all of culinary school. I'm focusing on the blending of flavors, taking the subtle heat of ginger and galangal and weaving it into a classic sauce supreme. It's almost a religious experience. Ava's sharp blue eyes studied me, not with judgment, but with an intense, admiring focus. That's your magic, Raiden. That bridge you build between the continents. You're already leagues beyond most of the seniors here. Listen, I'm quitting Dubois next month. I'm starting my own consulting firm. Small, high-end private dining. I need a signature chef, someone with your vision. Come cook for me occasionally. The pay is excellent, and the hours are saner. This was the opportunity. Working for Chef Etienne gave me the credentials, but working for Ava gave me the freedom to create. I left Le Serpent de Mer after a grueling year and a half, armed with a powerful recommendation and a stack of valuable French recipes. Working with Ava was transformative. She was an astute businesswoman and a brilliant fellow chef. We clicked immediately, creatively and professionally. Our first major gig, a week-long private dinner series for a venture capitalist's anniversary, was a massive success. I executed a menu that was entirely my own. Rendang stuffed ravioli with brown butter sage sauce and seared scallops in a turmeric lime reduction. The critics who attended praised my fearless innovation. Ava, always my most candid critic and biggest supporter, was thrilled. Raiden, you're becoming the name to know in Paris. It's no longer about Etienne's kitchen. It's about your food. As our professional success grew, so did the subtle shift in our dynamic. We spent more time together, celebrated successes with wine by the Seine, and talked about everything, just food. I realized that the focused, driven atmosphere around Ava was exactly what my life had been missing. She didn't seek distraction. She sought achievement. She didn't dismiss my work. She challenged me to make it better. One night, after a demanding private event, we were cleaning up the temporary kitchen. The air was thick with the scent of spices and success. That foie gras terrine was perfect tonight, Raiden. Honestly, Ava said, leaning against the counter, her hair loose, a smudge of chocolate on her cheek. She was relaxed, beautiful, and happy. It needed that hint of keycap manis to cut the richness, though. A little risk, I replied, drying a knife. She stepped closer, reaching up to wipe the chocolate smudge with her thumb. The contact was brief but charged. You're good at risk, Raiden. You always were. You took the biggest risk walking away from New York, from everything comfortable. I looked at her, truly seeing her, not just a colleague, but a brilliant, compelling woman who had been a lifeline and a catalyst for my success. She was the one who had seen my potential all along. I had to, I murmured, my voice low. Staying would have been the bigger risk. She didn't press, she just nodded, her blue eyes deep and understanding. I know. Sometimes the person who believes in you the most is the one you need the closest. The unspoken connection hung there, potent and undeniable. We didn't cross that line that night. The professional respect was too strong, and the shadow of my past was still too recent. But the relationship was evolving. Ava wasn't a distraction, she was a partner. In business, in ambition, and maybe eventually in life. 2 years flew by. My name began appearing in major European culinary journals. I was no longer an apprentice, I was a rising star. Ava and I had plans to open a high-concept restaurant in the city center. Then, one crisp autumn morning, an email snuck past my filters. It was from an old college friend. Someone I'd forgotten to block. The subject line was chillingly familiar. Liam's gallery closes. The body of the email was simple. Liam's career had fizzled after his initial installation was panned by critics. He'd left the city, and the last Maya had posted on social media was a desperate, emotional plea for space. The attached photo was of her, looking tired and drawn, not the vibrant woman I remembered. The news hit me with a dull thud. It wasn't triumph, it was just closure. The distraction that had cost me my relationship had failed. A week later, I received a text on my new, carefully guarded professional number. It was a New York area code. Raiden, it's Maya. I know this is a long shot. I heard you're successful. I need to talk to you. I made a huge mistake, please. Can you call me? I miss you. I stared at the screen, the 3 simple words, I miss you, holding no power over me. They were 3 years too late. I was an ocean and a lifetime away, literally and figuratively. I put my phone down untouched and focused on the perfect chiffonade of basil for the evening's menu. I had no intention of responding. My future was in Paris next to Ava, next to a 5-star review. But the text served as a sharp reminder. It was time to close that final necessary chapter. It was time to go home, if only to show the ghost of my former self just how far Raiden Miller had truly traveled. I decided I would go back to New York, not for Maya, but for a celebration of my own making. 2 months after receiving Maya's text, I stood on the tarmac at JFK, the cold New York air hitting me with a familiar metallic scent. I wasn't here to reconcile or to gloat. I was here on business. Ava and I had landed a major contract, catering a high-profile, exclusive New York film premiere afterparty. It was the perfect stage for my return. We rented an industrial chic loft in Manhattan, transforming it into a temporary kitchen, a fortress of focused culinary energy. Ava was with me, vibrant and absolutely in her element, directing the logistics, charming the suppliers, and providing that razor-sharp feedback I'd grown to rely on. We worked in seamless tandem, two halves of a powerful, successful partnership. The truffle oil must be French, Raiden, nothing from California, Ava dictated, reviewing the final order list. She noticed my slight preoccupation. What's wrong? You're usually obsessing over the perfect salt ratio, not staring into space. I smiled, a genuine one that felt effortless around her. Nothing, just the air. It smells like ambition and regret here. I think I finally understand the difference. I hadn't replied to Maya's text, but I knew she knew I was back. The New York food scene was small, and my name was circulating. I was Raiden Miller, the Paris-trained chef, the one with the fearless innovation, not the guy who just followed recipes. Our event was a roaring success. The critics raved about my fusion concept, miniaturized martabak with caviar, and a deconstructed opera cake utilizing gula jawa, palm sugar. I spent the night circulating the room, shaking hands with film directors and famous critics, absorbing the praise that felt long overdue. It was near midnight when the inevitable happened. I was discussing sourcing with a local artisanal baker when I felt a light touch on my arm. Raiden, oh my God, it is you. I turned, it was Maya. She was different. Not just older, but diminished. Her hair was less vibrant, her eyes were tired, and the effortless chic was replaced by an outfit that looked slightly too worn for the glittering crowd. She wasn't radiant. She looked haunted. Hello, Maya, I said, my voice polite and distant, the cool tone of a business acquaintance. Her composure fractured instantly. She leaned in, her eyes pleading. I heard you were back. I can't believe how incredible all of this is. You're famous, Raiden. Your food. It's everything you dreamed of. It is, I confirmed, stepping back subtly to maintain distance. I had a phenomenal business partner who helped me realize it. I glanced toward Ava, who was currently laughing with a major film producer, looking absolutely stunning in a sleek black dress. Maya followed my gaze, a flicker of something sharp, jealousy perhaps, crossing her face. She quickly turned back to me. Please, Raiden, can we talk just for 5 minutes? I know I messed up terribly. I was so immature, so obsessed with Liam's validation, I completely lost sight of what I had. Her voice was a desperate whisper. Liam. He ended up moving to LA. Things didn't work out. My life just fell apart after you left. I realize now that all the feeling and vision I thought I needed was actually right here with you. She gestured vaguely at the successful party around us. I watched her, feeling nothing but a detached sense of finality. She was apologizing, but she was still centering the narrative on her own loss and realization, not my pain. I appreciate the apology, Maya, truly, I said. But you're missing the point. You didn't lose sight of what you had. You dismissed what I was. You saw my passion as a structured hobby, not a career. You chose a distraction over a partnership. And that was a mistake I had to fix for myself. She reached out, trying to take my hand, but I politely moved it. But we can fix it now. You're back. I'm here. We could start over. I've changed, Raiden. I can support your career now. I'll be different. I don't need you to be different, Maya, I replied, the truth settling in my stomach like a perfectly set custard. I need you to understand that I have moved on, and I've found someone who understands my vision without me having to beg for her attention. At that exact moment, Ava walked up to me, placing her hand naturally and proprietarily on my lower back. She looked from me to Maya, her blue eyes polite but utterly cool. Raiden, darling, the producer from A24 wants to talk about a collaboration for their next premiere. He absolutely adored the Rendang Terrine, Ava said, speaking in a mix of smooth English and perfectly accented French. She was using her full, sophisticated European charm. You know how important this is. It was a perfectly timed rescue, a clear declaration of territory. Of course, I replied, turning to Ava and allowing my face to soften with genuine affection. Excuse me, Maya. Ava and I have to talk business. It was good seeing you. Ava gave Maya a brief, dismissive nod and then gently steered me away. As we walked through the glittering crowd, I felt her hand squeeze my back, a silent acknowledgement of the tension she had just diffused. You're a good actress, I murmured, leaning close to her ear. I'm a good partner, Raiden, she corrected, her voice low and serious. She paused in an empty hallway, turning to face me. Look, I've been waiting for the right moment. I didn't want to rush things, especially with your history, but I'm tired of playing strictly business. You came all the way back here, and you handled that with an incredible amount of strength. She stepped closer, the sharp edges of her ambition softening with genuine emotion. I want to be more than just your business partner. I've been your professional rival, your friend, and now I'm your lifeline. I don't care about your past. I only care about the future we're building. Je t'aime, Raiden. I love your passion, your drive, and your ridiculous insistence on using Indonesian spices and French classics. I looked at her into those piercing blue eyes that saw all of my flaws and all of my potential. She wasn't a shadow of the past. She was the brilliant light of the future. She was focused, she was ambitious, and she loved me for the man I was becoming. I took her face in my hands. You're right, you are a good partner. I leaned down and kissed her, a deep, slow kiss that was years in the making, a kiss that was the beginning of my true, undistracted life. And I love your confidence, Ava. Now, let's go talk to that producer. As we walked back into the party, arm in arm, I didn't spare a glance backward. The apology was too late. I was no longer the guy waiting for someone else's approval. I was finally the main course. The morning after the premiere party was bright, crisp, and filled with the satisfying hum of professional success. Ava and I were packing up our temporary kitchen, fueled by strong French press coffee and the fantastic reviews already flooding in. The New York event had been a decisive victory, solidifying our reputation and bringing a flood of new, high-profile business proposals. A 2-page spread in the Times food section, Raiden. They called your martabak revolutionary. Revolutionary, Ava declared, tapping the newspaper with a manicured nail, her eyes shining with pride. Pride in our work. It was a good night, I conceded. But my mind drifted briefly back to the confrontation with Maya. I hadn't been angry. I'd been utterly neutral. That neutrality was the clearest sign that the chapter was truly closed. She won't bother you again, Ava said, sensing my lingering thought. She had an uncanny ability to read me. The look on her face when she realized she'd replaced a future Michelin chef with whatever that Liam was. It was a look of total defeat. You gave her the closure she didn't deserve, but needed. I took a deep breath. I just needed her to see that my success wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about proving myself right. And you did. Now let's focus on our Parisian bistro. We have to fly back tomorrow to finalize the lease. The next 24 hours were a celebration of our new partnership, both professional and personal. We finalized our business plans, discussed future menu concepts, and most importantly, solidified the easy, ambitious love that had grown between us. Ava was my true collaborator, the one who saw my heart's true recipe. Before leaving for the airport, I made one final necessary stop. I went to the small, slightly run-down apartment building where Maya and I had once lived. I didn't go inside, I simply stood across the street, looking up at the window of our old third-floor unit. As if on cue, the door opened, and Maya stepped out, carrying a large cardboard box labeled art supplies. She looked tired, her shoulders slumped, no trace of the vibrant, self-assured woman I'd loved years ago. She was struggling to balance the box and her phone, which was clearly showing a job listing website. She saw me. She froze, dropping the box with a crash. Tubes of dried paint, old brushes, and rolls of paper scattered across the pavement. She didn't try to cross the street this time. She just stared, her face crumpling with a fresh wave of realization. "Raiden," she whispered, her voice barely carrying across the traffic noise. I walked a few steps toward her, stopping safely on the curb. "I'm leaving for Paris now, Maya. Just wanted to wish you well." She finally found her voice, tinged with a devastating regret. "I saw the reviews. The critics, they're calling you the next big thing. I can't believe I called your work just following recipes. I threw away everything, Raiden." "For nothing, Liam. He's gone. He took the validation and ran. And I'm here, packing up old student projects." The raw, unvarnished regret in her eyes was palpable. The glamorous film premiere confrontation had been defensive. This was stripped-bare reality. "I know," I said quietly. "And I hope you find what you're truly looking for, Maya. Not someone else's vision, but your own." She took a shaky step forward. Can we just have coffee before you go? Just to talk about it all?" I shook my head, my resolve absolute. There's nothing left to talk about. The time for that conversation was 3 years ago, when I was eating a perfect salmon dinner alone, wondering why I wasn't enough. I lifted my wrist, glancing at my watch, a subtle but clear indication of my tight schedule. "I have a flight to catch. My partner is waiting." I offered her a polite, final nod. I turned away, not allowing myself a single moment of pity or relenting. As I walked back to the waiting taxi, I felt the weight of her stare on my back. But it no longer anchored me. I slid into the cab, where Ava was already on a call, laughing and finalizing a supplier order in rapid-fire French. She ended the call as I buckled my seatbelt and reached for my hand, squeezing it warmly. "Everything all right?" she asked. "Perfect," I replied, bringing her hand to my lips for a quick kiss. "Just closing a minor account. The books are balanced now." As the taxi merged into the traffic, heading towards the airport, I didn't look back at the old apartment, the scattered art supplies, or the woman who had finally realized what she had lost. My sight was fixed firmly ahead on the gleaming, successful future I was building in Paris. I was no longer an unstirred heart. I was finally complete, perfectly balanced, and ready to serve the world the best of myself.